Welcome to our session on an introduction to St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. The letter to the Philippians was written while Paul was in prison, more than likely in Ephesus, or what today is modern Turkey. While in chains, Paul thinks about the potential end of his life's work and looks ahead to what might lie in store. Paul is joyful even amid adversity. He displays heartfelt gratitude to the Philippians, who he considers his joy and crown. The letter is categorized as a letter of friendship or family letter. He thanks the Philippians for their financial aid because the prisoners in the ancient world would receive no food from the local authorities. He also thanks them for the services of Epaphroditus. Paul seems to have entered into a financial partnership with the Philippians. This contrasts with his refusal to accept money from Corinth. The Philippians supported Paul materially in his ministry, and they in turn shared the fruits of his labor. In the letter, Paul warns them about potential intruders. He mediates a dispute between two female leaders and exhorts the Philippians to live out the Jesus story as a counter-imperial colony of heavenly citizens. That is, without joining in the worship of the Roman emperor or other pagan gods in the various temples that there were in the city. The centerpiece of the letter is the famous poem of Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 to 11, that tells the story of Jesus' incarnation, humiliation, resurrection, and ascension. It goes like this. Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, coming in human likeness and found human in appearance. He humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Because of this, God greatly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bend, of those in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God, the Father. The great poem is to teach his readers how to think with the mind of Jesus, the Messiah. Paul says that the followers of Jesus will shine like lights in the world. The ancient city of Philippi is known today by its Greek name, Kreninitis, and is located in the northeast of modern Greece. Philip II of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great, aware of the silver and gold mines nearby, annexed the region in 356 BC. He named it Philippi after his own name. The city remained important even after the Roman conquest of Macedonia, or northern Greece, in 168 or 167 BC. In 42 BC, Philippi and its surrounding region was the site of one of the most famous battles in Roman history, when Mark Antony and Octavian defeated the forces of Brutus and Cassius, the assassins of Julius Caesar, the emperor. Many of the Roman army veterans were settled in Philippi, making the city a Roman colony. After Octavian defeated Mark Antony at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, even more Roman military veterans were settled in Philippi. Octavian, later known as Augustus Caesar, Emperor Augustus Caesar, renamed the colony after himself, calling it Colonia Julia Augusta Philippensis. In Paul's time, Philippi had a population of about 10,000, about 1/10 of the size of Thessalonica, which was 90 miles west. Philippi had a Roman system of government. The colony enjoyed Italian legal status and certain tax exemptions. A cohort of praetorians, or troops from the emperor's own personal guard, was garrisoned in Philippi. As many as 35 different deities were venerated in the temples of Philippi. Prominent among them was Dionysus, Artemis or Diana, and naturally worship of the divine emperor Caesar Augustus. The Philippian church Paul established had the distinction of being the first church in Europe and part of his first phase of mission in Macedonia or northern Greece. Let me show you a map. Sometime in AD 49 or 50, Paul and his co-workers, including Silas and perhaps Luke, left Troas in Asia Minor, or in northern what today is Turkey, and arrived at the port town of Neapolis, then took the 12-mile walk to Philippi. Luke reports several events from Paul's initial visit. These include the conversion of Lydia, a Gentile worshiper of God of Israel, the exorcism of a fortune-telling slave girl, and the trouble into which this plunged Paul and Silas when the girl's owners saw that their business was ruined. Paul and Silas were beaten and imprisoned without a trial. There was an earthquake at midnight. The jailer about to commit suicide was instead converted. Paul revealed in the morning that he and Silas were Roman citizens, which must have frightened the magistrates. This explains Paul's comment not long afterwards when he says, "We had previously suffered and been treated outrageously in Philippi," that we read about in 1 Thessalonians. While some commentators have suggested that the letter to the Philippians was written from Rome or Caesarea in northern Israel, both places where Paul was imprisoned, nevertheless, it is more likely that Paul wrote the letter to the Philippians when he was imprisoned in Ephesus, where he spent a considerable time. Timothy is the co-author of Philippians, yet we have no evidence that Timothy accompanied Paul to Rome. He more likely remained in Ephesus. The Philippians didn't present Paul with any problems, like the Galatian church or Thessalonians. The church was relatively healthy compared to some of Paul's others. The Philippians were undisturbed by the anxieties and idleness that affected the Thessalonians. They did not experience fractionalism and the immorality of the Corinthians. However, Paul was worried that Jewish Christian missionaries, similar to those who had made trouble in Galatia, had arrived or might soon arrive in Philippi. He warns the Philippians that those dogs, those evildoers, are mutilators of the flesh. Their message announces the superiority of their inherited privilege as Jews and urges male Gentiles or non-Jews to be circumcised. Paul hopes to be released and to visit Philippi once more. The principal occasion for the letter is Paul's gratitude for the financial support arriving through Epaphroditus from Philippi. Some believe the Philippians consist of one letter, others 2 letters, or even more, that have been stitched together. However, there's a lack of literary evidence for this. If the editors of Philippian or Pauline letter collection felt free to unite 2 or 3 letters, we might wonder why they did not smooth out the transitions. For example, the rough transition we see between chapter 3, verse 1 and chapter 3, verse 2. It is not difficult to imagine why Philippians takes the shape that it does, ebbing and flowing between exhortation and what seem to be final marks, especially if Paul is in prison, was not able to compose the letter straight through, but had interruptions and therefore delays as he wrote it over a few days. Well, this concludes our introductory session to the letter of Philippians, and next time we'll begin actually reading the letter. God bless you and your family.